Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting of June 9th, 2021. I'm the Select Board Chair, Tom Lacusa, and I'll be confirming that all members and anticipated persons on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mark Strange.
Here.
Steve Morantz.
Here.
Richard Foster.
Here.
And Mark Gold.
Here.
Okay, and staff.
Recording in progress.
I'll call your name, and we have Mike Barbieri.
Here.
And I think you're it tonight, right?
Yep, for the time being.
Okay, yes, Lynn will be joining us later. So this open meeting of the Long Meadow Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as a reasonable public access is afforded. Ensuring public access did not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will have participants who are seeking to volunteer for town, speaking. The Long Meadow Select Board is convening by Zoom webinar as posted in the town's website, identifying how the public may join. There's no chat or Q&A function. For residents' comments, now we'll overlook that. Are we actually using the Zoom webinar?
No, I was advised just to do a Zoom meeting for this one. So it'll just be me unmuting people. Everyone's just going to be in on here.
Okay, so you would be able to, get Mike's attention, and he will, and you could probably use the chat function tonight, right? So,
yep, you could use the chat. And pretty much everyone's name is listed on the side. The only people that I may ask help for when it's time to interview them is the ones that are calling in with the phone numbers. I'll probably just ask them when their turn comes up, if they hear their name from the chair, just to speak up and say that they're here, because for the phone numbers, I can't tell who it is.
Okay, and this would be a standard, when we call you forward, we'll ask you to identify your names and addresses, and then we'll ask you to just make a small comment about why you're interested in this volunteer position for the town. So this meeting is being recorded, and some attendees are participating by a video conference. And all the materials for this meeting are available on the agenda posted on longmeadow.org. And the ground rules is I will introduce each speaker on the agenda, and after they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members to see if they have any comments or motions. And basically, if members wish to engage in a colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And when the chair yields to you, speak your name clearly. And we'd like to have accurate minutes of what was said tonight. And finally, there'll be no votes. Well, there could be a vote in this meeting, and each vote will be taken and conducted by roll call vote. Okay, so we are going to get right to business here and with the interviews. And we did have a request from Thea Katsoudakis to, if you could go early. She's looking for a reappointment of the 3-year term to the Cultural Council. So if you could, Thea, if you can just.
Thea, are you unmuted right now?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we could hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've been on the Long Meadow Cultural Council for 3 years, and I would like to continue. I really like the work they do, and I like working with Peg and our group. I was I am a retired vice president from Bank of America, and a lot of my accounts included grant making and scholarship accounts. And I'm also on the Education Committee of the Community Foundation of Western Mass, an emeritus member. And I recently reviewed scholarship applications and helped select recipients. And I do the same for the Kiwanis Club of Springfield. And I'm currently the secretary of the Longmeadow Cultural Council. And I would like to reapply to continue on.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions, Katia? On the board? Okay, well, I guess I would just ask you, of all the things you've been involved in with the Cultural Council, was there anything specific that you really found enjoyable to be part of?
I'm sorry, is there anything?
Any specific either activity or event that you felt particularly happy to be part of?
I just enjoy seeing all the grant applications and all the basically the very nice things that they do for the community of Longmeadow. And I know it was kind of rough the past year because a lot of places they couldn't do things in public. They had to do it virtual, and it was successful. And I just think it's something very nice for the community.
All right, and this year should be a more exciting year than last. We appreciate you stepping forward to continue with this committee. So thank you.
And thank you so much, and thank you so much for letting me be able to speak first.
Okay, no problem, Tanya. All right, take care.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yep. Okay, our next person, we have Susan Shepard, who is looking for reappointment to the Recycling Committee for a 3-year term. Do we have Susan?
I just saw her, but I'm not sure. Oh, there she is.
Great.
There, I'm here. Hello, hello.
Hello, Susan. So, yeah, give your name and address and your interest in the Recycling Committee.
Susan Shepard. I live at 58 Emerson Road, just up the street from the Recycling Center. I worked this past year for the first time, and we did a few projects in the Longmeadow cleanup and the paper shredding. And I hear that the swap shop is going to be opening in the next few weeks, so that's exciting. And I'd like to continue. It's been a good group.
All right, great. That's good to know the swap shop will be opening. A lot of people have been cleaning their houses during COVID, and it's going to be full of stuff, I'm sure. I know I have a lot of things I need to take over. Do we have any questions from members of the board? Okay. Hearing none. Susan, it was great. And, you know, we did that cleanup, and this is the first one. And how was your committee involved with that? Just as volunteers, or did you help with coordination?
Some coordination and actually working that day as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. It was a big project. I hope that's something that becomes annual. Okay. So we have a lot of folks on our list, so I'm going to have to keep going, but we'll make a decision in 2 weeks and let you know. All right, Susan. All right. Next, we'd have David Horowitz, Park and Recreation, the reappointment for a 3-year term.
Thank you, Tom. Dave Horowitz, 18 Circle Road. I'm not sure if this would be my 3rd or 4th term, quite frankly. When I learned that I was up for renewal, it took me a little bit to think about how long I've been doing this. But it's been time well spent, and I've enjoyed myself tremendously. When you asked that question at the beginning of why I'd want to continue, for me, the compelling reason is Wolf Swamp Fields. We've got about a $1.5 million project going on right now. I was part of the stakeholder group that really decided on what that thing was going to look like. I'm excited about its completion, and I'd like to carry it through to its completion. At the most recent town meeting, we changed some of the town bylaws relative to some signage opportunities for revenue generation.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really interested in making sure that our new DPW management team understands the importance of keeping that field well kept, because it's going to be a diamond for us. It's really going to be a jewel. So that's what I'd like to do.
All right, Dave. Well, it sounds like some exciting things are happening in your committee. Do we have any questions for the select board? Mark Gold, I see your hand.
David, thanks for all the effort you've been putting into the Parks and Recreation. I ask you the same thing I've asked other people last night on the Parks and Rec board, and that is, can you differentiate between programming and facilities in terms of, what you noted here was Wolf Swamp Fields, which is clearly facilities, and there's been a lot of discussion about that, but I'm interested in trying to understand and hear what it is people want to accomplish through programming.
It's a great question, Mark. I think you may have asked me that 3 years ago, actually, and I think I fumbled with an answer, but in 3 years, I've learned a little more about, from a program perspective, what Barry and her crew does at Park and Rec. You all remember Jim Russell, and if Mr. Russell taught me two things. One was how important it was to cherish the volunteers, but second all, thinking about the community, not just thinking about Park and Rec being a youth type function. It's also got to be an adult function, an age function, and it's got to appeal to everybody. And I think the difference here is the facilities, obviously managed from DPW, need to be sort of symbiotic with the programming that occurs. The white elephant, obviously, is COVID. And, unfortunately, we've lost, 14 months of programming. And frankly, our facilities, really never got the tender loving care they needed. A lot of people ask me, Dave, why are we doing the fields now? Why couldn't we have been doing them during COVID? And, due to a bunch of reasons, mainly because of state bid laws, we just couldn't make that happen. But at the end of the day, I think a combination of programming and facilities management is going to make Wolf Swamp Field the jewel, the crown jewel of recreation in Long Meadow.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, Steve Moretz has a question.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead, please.
Yes, really, thank you for your service. I have a question about actually facilities, though, in terms of, obviously, we want Wolf Swamp to look as good as it's going to look. My only concern would be, and I would assume you'd have some sort of input on this, is actually what you're going to put down on that field to make it look good. Yeah, if we're talking about pesticides, insecticides, I mean, these are, well, we're all going to be on the fields, but particularly for kids, I'm just concerned about, well, we got to make the grass look good, so we're going to put all this, what's the best word for it, all this stuff on the fields that really might not be in the best interest either of the wildlife around or the kids. And I am concerned about how Parks and Rec might deal with that. It's really not a question, it's just my concern, and if you want to respond, I would appreciate it.
Steve, that is a tremendous question, and another one that we fielded. In fact, during the due diligence aspect of the work at Wolf Swamp, the landscape architect, Malone McBroom, recommended that we do some subsurface investigation to make sure that sins of the past didn't exist at Wolf Swamp Fields. And luckily they didn't, which was great. When it comes to how to best manage that, we've got some real smart people in town. Later on tonight, you're going to interview John Bresnahan, my apologies. Great resource in terms of managing fields and understanding what has to happen. Quite frankly, I've lost a relationship. I felt very comfortable calling DPW Director Mazza with questions and thoughts. I'm going to reestablish that, hopefully, if you appoint me for 3 more years with the folks at DPW, and hopefully it'll be a learning curve for both of us. But rest assured, we'll give that consideration for sure.
Okay, David, thank you. And we will let you know in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, folks.
Okay, bye now. Next, we have Michael Michon, Zoning Board of Appeals, looking for a reappointment as an associate for 1 year ending 2022. I know he's here. I saw him before.
Okay, sorry, I was having a problem unmuting.
Okay.
Thank you again, Mike Michon. Yes, I'm actually seeking for my 3rd term here with the associate position with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay. And your address, Mike?
I'm sorry?
Your address in town?
I'm sorry, it's 101 Hopkins Place in
Thank you.
Longmeadow.
And so this is your third time to get on this board.
Correct. We have a really good group of volunteers. I see Jerry Plum and Ellen Fryman as well. We all complement each other really well with our leader, David Lavenberg. Looking forward to continuing service for the town.
Well, it'll be an exciting year. We know that because there is a big zoning question that's going to come up before you. Well, I'll go before you and then go to the town later, but we're going to do with the shops. So I hope you're up for it.
Always.
Great, great. Questions, Mark Gold?
Thank you, Michael. Question about training, and I'm going to ask this of everybody on the ZBA. Can you talk to me a little bit about any kind of specialized training or that you've had or need to have or ought to have to be part of the ZBA?
Specialized training. I've never been asked that. I'm not familiar with that, other than my lifelong position as a real estate developer in finance for 35 years, between permitting and my own daily activities of zoning in other communities in the state and other country, other parts of New England. But I'm not aware of any other training other than the ethics that we had to go through.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, Michael, thank you for wanting to continue with this task. It's going to be an important one this year, and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. And we have next Christine Beaumont, Board of Health, looking for reappointment, an associate for a 1-year term. Christine, could you introduce yourself and give us your address?
Sure. My name is Christine Beaumont. I live at 482 Laurel Street in Longmeadow, and I've lived here for over 40 years. I've raised 2 children who are now in college in Longmeadow, and I love this community. I've been a registered nurse for almost 30 years. I have my master's in the public health concentration of nursing, and my passion in nursing is prevention-based work. In my professional role, I'm lucky enough to be able to do some great prevention work, as well as I've had the role of, for the last 1.5 years, of doing a lot of COVID-related work with the Department of Public Health. And so I went on the Board of Health about 6 months ago, and much of the work so far has been around the town's COVID plans and hearing the great grant work that has just been approved. And I'm excited and looking forward to the opportunity to continue on the Board of Health and perhaps get to talk about more than COVID soon. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, well, that is good. I'm excited to hear you talking about prevention, because as we know, the least expensive way to deal with any problem is to prevent it in the first place. And so we had a lot of preventative actions this year that were the health board was involved with. And as you know now, we have just 1 active COVID case in town, which speaks to the work that your group and everyone else and other folks in town have done. Do we have any other questions from board members? Okay.
Mr. Morantz has a question.
Okay, you're off the
screen. Yes, again, thank you for your service, and I think you'll do quite well on this. I do have a question, because one of the applicants for the Board of Health last night talked about, direction from the state, and I would have a disagreement with that gentleman, in that I do not believe that the state gave any community direction for a long time about how to handle COVID and open meeting, etc. And so my question would be, in terms of, if there is lack of direction from the state, how do you view the local Board of Health being able to handle such events?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what area the lack of direction you're thinking of is, as a nurse, I felt like we had quite a bit of direction, but it was learn as we go kind of thing. So in my own personal, professional life, we were getting regular communication, but it was evolving and changing quickly. So it felt a bit confusing at times. I think what you're referring to, though, is direction to how to specifically handle things at the local level versus local decision on things. And I'm thinking that's what you're referring to. And I think
what I'm specifically referring to is there was an issue of our town meeting, where and when and how to hold town meeting. And I believe that the state gave no direction about what local communities should do, or doesn't give our local Board of Health any direction. And we didn't get a lot of direction about how to hold this from the Board of Health. Board of Health came through quite strongly on Halloween, which was excellent. But it's that kind of issue, and hopefully it will never happen again. But and the fact that the state took away the incredibly competent program that the town had set up to do vaccination, it's basically local state relations, is what I'm asking about. And I realize you really can't. There's not a whole lot you can do about it, but just like to see you aware of it, and whatever you can address to it, great.
I 100% agree. I was very disappointed that the state didn't come through with the vaccine supply after the town went to great lengths to set up a wonderful program. And I think this was just very unusual circumstances. And as far as the open meeting directions, I believe we took guidance from Lynn Simmons, and I cannot recall at this moment if the new director was on board at that point when they were setting up those plans. So I can't speak directly to what was given to the board on that.
Okay, well,
I agree.
Mark Gold, do you have a question? No.
I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but because it's likely in the next couple of years, certainly during a term that you might be renewed for, that we're going to have a joint health agreement. We've got that contract. How do you see that not working? But how do you see Long Meadow, making sure that we are independent, that make sure we get our share of the attention, that we get our particular issues taken care of if we're doing a joint health initiative with towns that may be more urban than us, have more, more rural issues, whatever it is. How do you see us keeping our Long Meadow to the forefront?
I agree that is a concern. I heard about that at the last Board of Health meeting, the application that was approved. And I know that there's been a great deal of talk about regionalization in local health departments for some time. I've learned that through my professional career. And this is a new grant that they're approved for. And I have the same concern that you do. The current level of staffing that Long Meadow has for nursing, to me, does seem like it could be decreased by taking on several other communities, work with one full-time position. But I'm hoping that as that grows and develops, we'll see the staff in that department grow as well.
Tom, if I could just kind of respond, and this isn't so much as, I guess my comment was based on, if the employees are all shared employees, it's the Board of Health who we're going to rely on, and the residents are going to be relying on to be 100% looking out for the best interests of the citizens of Long Meadow. So I just thought I'd just put that out there, because I think the Board of Health is going to take on a different bent, if you will, versus when we had Beverly Hirschhorn and she just looked out for the town of Long Meadow. I think Finn, or whoever it is going to be, is going to have multiple responsibilities. So not to say that they won't look out for Long Meadow, but they're sharing their responsibilities, and you wouldn't be. Thank you.
Okay, and so no other questions from the board? Okay, I would just say, Christine, that this year we had like these 2 town meetings, one outdoor at the high school, and then afterwards there was no reports of anyone getting COVID from the town meeting, and we had a second town meeting not long ago, and I haven't heard any reports of COVID. Those were, we know that your group would have stepped in had there been any real issues. We know that your group has a lot of experience, the Board of Health, and also when it came down to Halloween, your group, stepped in and made it easier for a lot of families to know that they didn't have to worry about, a lot of people coming to their house for Halloween. So thank you for your service, and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks about your request to be on the board again.
Thank you.
Okay, Christine. And next we have Marianne Squire, who is Council of Aging Board of Directors. She's a new appointment seeking a 3-year term. Marianne, if you could just give us your name and address and introduce.
Yes.
You.
Thank you for acknowledging the fact that I'm interested. My name is Marianne Squire. I live at 39 Albemarle Road. I have been here 50 plus years. So I have been active in our senior population through our senior events at our existing center. I'm looking forward to our new one, and have been active in the over 60. And I know there's 2 vacancies coming up with big shoes to fill. So if I could help out in that department, I'd be pleased to.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions? Mark Gold, I see you raising your hand.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for applying. How do you see the relationship between the Council on Aging and Jim Layden, who's the director of the COA and the Adult Center? What's his
well
the board?
active? I hope. I see Jim as an active participant, certainly, and I think he's receptive to a lot of ideas. I mean, when I was in over 60, he certainly has been receptive to a lot of our ideas, so I don't see that as a hurdle.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, Christine. Well, you're right. This is going to be, or Marianne, I'm sorry. Marianne, this is going to be an exciting year with the opening of the new, and people are going to all be asking you, like what's going on? And
what's going on?
Well, it's a new appointment, but it sounds like you've had a lot of experience over there already. So you'll be ready for all.
Well, I've just been around a long time. I'm looking forward to it as well as all the others.
All right, Marianne, we'll let you know in a couple of weeks. All right.
Fine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
And next we have Brett Lukasik, Cable Advisory Committee, who was looking for a new appointment. I probably pronounced your name wrong, Brett. Could you just say your name and your address?
It's okay. It's very typical. As you might want to know, you might know with your last name, is Brett Lukasik, 38 Crescent Road. And I actually applied for a few of these, thinking that I could loved old houses and really loves the green. I could help there. Be willing to do whatever they want to do. So anyway, as far as the cable thing, I didn't realize that was actually open. I kind of put that on there because I saw it and I thought, well, that'd be great to do. But yeah, I'm there for those.
Okay, well, we appreciate you being so ambitious, and helping the town with 3 different committees, commissions, and so forth. Questions from the board? Mark Gold.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, for applying. the Historic District Commission has some categories that we are required to. Last night, or Monday night, I'm sorry, we spoke to somebody who indicated, there's supposed to be architects, supposed to be realtors, there's supposed to be resident. Do you know if you fall into any of those required categories as opposed to being an at-large, potential at-large member?
No, I would be, as far as the historic district, I'm in at-large, and I live right off the green. And if I can help, it seems like there aren't that many people there a lot of times. I'm an alternate now, and but if other people want to fill in, then that's just fine. I mean, I live so close to it. I feel like I like to be involved.
Thank you. And just a quick question about the Cable Advisory Committee. Maybe it's an acknowledgement that, I just want to make sure you're aware that they don't have anything to do with cable rates. They do deal with Comcast on complaints and pretty much supporting the Long Meadow Public Access TV, but it's not really what I'd say a contract rate negotiation discussion. So
well, I wouldn't be interested in contract rate. I was more involved in production and things like that. I'd be much more useful on that end of things. I used to live in Los Angeles and work as a freelancer, like doing videotaping, which tells my age, but I used to be much more involved in production.
Thank you.
I'd be more than happy to go back to that. And then I went over to something I actually make a living at, which is broadcast television.
Yeah, you might be more interested in LCTV, but I'm not going to push that either. Thank you.
I'd be more than happy to help with that. I mean, I'm just kind of poking around, saying where can I be useful.
Well, this is a good start. You'll get a good purview of what's going on from those committees you're on, and it's good. I spent 5 years in Los Angeles myself, so at some point, hopefully, we can talk about LA. And I went back a few years ago. It's changed. We went to the Brown Derby, which had been open since the 20s. And they said, "Oh, it's been closed 20 years." Yeah, I was like, "What? How did that happen?" Okay, Mr. Lukasik, thank you for your interest, and we'll let you know in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Arlene Miller, a new person. No, Community Preservation, Recycling, Reappointment for a 3-year term. I wonder how many times, Arlene, you've been on this committee.
Which one?
Well, I guess which is the one you've been on the longest? Recycling?
I think recycling's been around before community preservation, that's for sure. Yes, I was an original member. Am I interviewing for both at this moment or just one?
Oh, yeah, we can do both at this time, yeah.
That would be great. So yes, I was an original member of the Recycling Commission, and I'm original member of the Community Preservation Committee. So the Recycling Committee has been around since the early 80s. And the Community Preservation Committee didn't start until maybe 15 years ago. But anyhow, my name is Arlene Miller. I live at 68 East Greenwich Road in Long Meadow, and I'm interested in remaining on both. The Recycling Committee, as you all know, is very active. It actually acts as a recycling coordinator as a group in the town of Long Meadow. We don't have a paid recycling coordinator, but we have this group of dedicated individuals who monitor and encourage and try to educate the community and lobby for all aspects of good recycling in the town. We've been responsible for enhancing the curbside program, and certainly for volunteering and working at the recycling center, particularly the swap shop. And as Susan Shepard mentioned, yes, we are working on hopefully reopening that next week, actually, if all things come together at the right time. And in addition, we help put out literature, the annual recycling calendar, and this brochure that we've done recently is going to be mailed together to every resident in the community. It used to be an insert in the reminder, and because of some grant money and some opportunity, we've been able to mail it to everybody this year, and that will be coming out next week, so watch for your mail. on that, and that people look forward to the calendar and to this information. And just a reminder, Long Meadows recycling efforts are fabulous. The town does a great job. The elected officials have supported many of the most current best practices that the state recommends for recycling, and that's showing in our waste reduction and our recycling numbers. And I know you're curious, but the recycling markets are going up and our costs are going down. So all of that's good on the recycling front. Community preservation, it's been a great little niche of money for the community to do some special things that would not ordinarily get funded. One of the things that I'm most pleased about is the historic preservation of our town buildings, center school, community house, town hall, library. Significant funds from the community preservation accounts and efforts have gone to help restore and rehabilitate those buildings. And certainly when recreation was added to the community preservation menu 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, that was certainly a bonus to Long Meadow because we have so many fields and pieces of recreation that needed enhancement. A lot of money has gone to that, including, of course, the Wolf Swamp Road fields. So I'm hoping, I would love to continue to serve on both of those committees. If you think my time there has been worthwhile, I've certainly enjoyed it. And any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Okay.
Whoops.
I see Steve Morantz has one. We'll start with that.
Yes. Well, once again, Arlene, thank you for your service. This is a question about actually recycling. You talked about curbside recycling. Everything I've heard about plastics is that 8% of all plastics are recycled. I know that a whole bunch of plastics is being dumped into our curbside recycling. I have no idea what happens to it as it heads off to Springfield, but since we have this opportunity here, talk a little bit about the plastics recycling that either A, for the town, or B, for America in general. I'd be really curious to know about if I'm just putting stuff in that I really shouldn't be, it's not going anywhere, or what. But I hope you know something about this.
Right. Well, all our recycling in Long Meadow at curbside goes to the Springfield Materials Recycling Facility, as you've mentioned. Some of the plastics we made, the state made a decision some years ago to include, I'm going to use numbers, but the numbers really aren't, I shouldn't use numbers, but jugs, certain materials are better recycling. We usually say 1 through 7s we accept at the MRF.
These are 1 through 7. These are things that are actually stamped on.
Yeah, 1 through 7 is the number on many of the materials that we take for recycling, including bulky rigids, which we collect at the recycling center, big, heavy plastic things that are accepted at the recycling center. So yes, plastics, number 1, milk jugs, Tide bottles, those kinds of things today are very valuable. Plastic number 5, which is a clear, thinner plastic, is going out of sight in terms of its value right now because of its ability to be made into materials that are very useful, and it's cheaper to do it through recycling than through virgin materials. The other plastics are less desirable, and we do try to get the most material out of most value out of every bit of the 3s, the 4s, the 6s, and the 7s that go to the MRF. And they may be made into blocks of plastic or things that are less valuable financially. But the financial value, if that's what you're saying, and maybe that's not just what you're saying, is in the 1, 2s, and 5s. Very little of our material goes to trash, if that's your question. The Springfield MRF, we're in like the 3%, 4%, maybe 5% of material going in through that facility goes to trash in terms of contamination and or not valuable materials.
Great.
I don't know if that helps.
No, because that means what I've been reading is not necessarily accurate about 1 through 7s, and just it's all a lot's not going to be recycled. But that's not the case. That's really good.
The great majority is. We will be probably redoing that sort of picture in the next 24 months, 12 to 24 months, in terms of the numbers that we will want. We don't want it. You don't make that kind of change easily. But the market, the Springfield, the waste management who runs the Springfield MRF just spent $2 million retrofitting the line to sort out, so we could specifically, it's an optical sorter they've added, which is a big investment to be able to pull out number 5s. They're that valuable right now. So they're looking to get money back, and guess what? We may get money back, which is really exciting.
Okay. Now, Arlene, you mentioned contamination. Could you just help people who are listening understand what they might do to avoid contamination of plastics?
Sure. Well, the biggest problem in the country, and particularly in Massachusetts and also in Longmeadow, in recycling, the biggest contaminant are plastic bags. Now, many people seem to think if they put their bills and their whatever in a plastic bag and put it in their recycling bin, that somebody's going to empty that out and they're going to take out the paper out of the plastic bag. Or if they put their bottles in the plastic bag, that somebody's going to empty that. That's not the case. The plastic bag, anything that's in a plastic bag that comes to the recycling facility is thrown away. Nobody's going to empty the bag. But the worst part of the plastic bags in the contamination as a contaminant is that the everything at this recycling facility is like on a conveyor belt, like at the Big Y. When your stuff goes through the conveyor belt, it goes on a conveyor belt. And the plastic bags get in the wheels of the conveyor belt and stop the process. They have to stop the process and clean these things out that choke up the conveyor belt process. So it's plastic bags, it's tanglers, like anything like plastic, like Christmas lights. That's kind of stuff is terrible. Any food waste in the recycling bin is a bad contaminant. We have a list of 10 things that are listed on our website that you can look up that don't have right in front of me, but that it's just, we do very, very well. We just could do better in Longmeadow. I think it's very good. And I'm certainly, Jeff McGowan and I hope to meet with Waste Management within 2 weeks to discuss a little bit more enforcement in terms of contamination and sticking to the waste reduction policy, which is, the lid has to be shut on the trash bag. You can't have a bag of trash on top of the 35-gallon trash cart, that sort of thing. And we'll be doing some enforcement and some reminders to people. But this little booklet that's coming, that you're going to get in the mail, it's got a lot of information about that.
Well, you did a great job. And again, I know you like talking trash. So
I do.
Mark Gold has a question.
I want to turn the discussion a little bit to CPA, community preservation. And the reason is, Monday night we interviewed a candidate who complained, I guess this might be a word, maybe the wrong word, but commented on the change in the match, that when we started it was a 1-to-1 state match and now it's only 17% of our funds. And Arlene, I just want to get your sense on, is it still worth it for the town to commit with only getting 17% state money, given
I'm not sure the 70% is accurate any longer. A year ago, the legislature changed the formula, increased the amount that CPC account would get from the deed transfer, which is what really funds the community preservation account. They upped it, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know what that up was. It didn't really, it was sort of muted because of the COVID experience and such. But now a lot of houses are selling, and there's a lot of transfers. So I'm expecting that our money is going to increase. In addition, the CPC has lobbied, the statewide CPC organization has lobbied for years to get, if there's excess money in the state budget at the end of the year, some of that money comes back to this program, the community preservation program. So we do get, I believe it's more than 17%, and I don't want to argue with the individual. I heard about that, but yes, I think Longmeadow's commitment when we started this program, how many years ago I don't remember, was to go conservative. As you know, we only have to do a 1% assessment, many community preservation legislation allows up to, I think, 3% assessment in communities, and we went very conservative because we realized we maybe didn't have the need as many other communities, and also we didn't feel we had the political will that folks would want to pay that much, commit to that much over the years. I think if you look back at what we've been able to do with that money, which is dedicated, and it's nobody else can sort of touch that. You can't use it for salaries. You can't use it for fire engines. You can't use it for a lot of things that you as leaders want to maybe put some more money into. It's helped enrich our community. The money that's been able to go into the library, the community house, the town hall, center school, and now into recreation. As Dave Horowitz said, Wolf Swamp Fields might be the jewel of Long Meadow. Well, that would not have happened without community preservation money as a seed to get that started. And the tennis courts, my goodness, a lot of money went into that from community preservation. So I think, yes, Mark, we don't get as much as Northampton because we chose to go 1%, not 3%, that kind of thing. But I think it's been very worthwhile to the community.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, I have a question.
Sure, Richard.
Yeah, Arlene, in addition to what you talked about on your involvement on the trash and the CPA, I'd like to also mention that you're a long-term member of our select board in town, which some people may have forgot, but you've been involved in our community for many years. So I don't know if there's a big enough plaque to put all your accomplishments on it. But I have a question. What are your thoughts about the Long Meadow and the future of possibly doing composting in town?
I love it. I spent 2 hours this morning at a webinar on composting, and the Recycling Commission is watching this. We've been watching it for years, waiting for the development of that infrastructure to come to the southern Connecticut Valley. We just don't have that yet, Richard. Although there was a new, I learned this morning, a new business in the Commonwealth that sets up in certain towns where they do yard waste composting, food composting into that, and they make a product that they sell, and they claim it's very cost effective and makes money for the town. I made big notes on that. It's coming. It's just a matter of when. I love the idea, but many steps we've taken. Certainly, currently, the DPW with help from the Recycling Commission, we sell compost bins at a reduced rate, $25 a bin. The town pays $43. We subsidize that with grant money so we can give our residents less expensive opportunity to compost in their backyard. That's a step. The second step we may be proposing, the Recycling Commission may be proposing, is having some drop-off composting, food waste composting at the recycling center. That grant opportunity has been delayed until the fall, so we will be discussing that. It's going to come. It's just a matter of getting the infrastructure in Western Massachusetts. Very exciting stuff is happening. I heard from 6 different vendors I listened to all over the state that are all of them doing different programs to increase the availability and decrease the cost of composting, either residential at the residential level, curbside level, or school level. That's what I was looking at. So, yes.
Is there anything that the select board could do to improve the possibility or speed up the process?
I don't think so. I think the select board, frankly, it's my position as a former selectman, not to come to you until the infrastructure is solid, reliable, and cost effective. Even though I love to talk trash, as Tom says, I wouldn't want to put the town in a position where this is costing us more money. Once the infrastructure is more mature in the Southern Valley, the eastern part of the state, unfortunately, is far ahead of us just because of their lack of landfill space and opportunity to get rid of trash. They've had to be more creative. So they've gone full bore, more full bore with residential and industrial composting. We're a little behind that, but it's coming. And no, yes, as soon as there's something realistic, that's reliable and cost effective, I think the select board hopefully would be on board with that. But thanks for that encouragement.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. And thank you for your service to the community.
You're very welcome.
All right. Well, Arlene, when it comes to composting, I've been a composter most of my adult life. And the hardest part is always the screening, and taking that beautiful soil, which is no longer dirt. It's become soil. And is there any chance that the town could buy machines, like along Richard's line? Like if we had a machine at the community gardens where people could bring their compost, put it in this machine, and it would sort it out, and then they'd get soil, and then the rest could just go into another composting. Is there any marketing for stuff like that for community?
Yeah, well, some of you, and Richard, of course, will remember this for sure. We did have an opportunity as a community some years ago where we took our leaves, yard waste, and put it behind the community gardens. There's a big field there, obviously, as you know. Right. And we did do some in-town composting. It was a terrific product, but we made one mistake, and I won't ever forget that mistake. It was on a warm day in the summer, and the DPW went and turned that pile, and the odor was not pleasant for about 48 hours. And the residents in that area were very vocal about that. And that was, even though we had to stop the program as a result of that incident, the compost that was produced at that site in the few years following until the pile was gone was tested at UMass. It was beautiful, came out with beautiful numbers. It was great stuff. We gave it out at Long Meadow Days in little bags at our booth. And I think the gardeners probably took as much of it as they possibly could down there. But we would love to do that, and we could do it, but it would be, that would be something that selectmen would have to have political will about. That's for sure.
But as far as for people who compost, kitchen waste and fruits and vegetable peelings and so forth, to get that shaken, is there any system that's being set up for people to do that?
You mean in town?
Well, I mean in any town, like.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. There's systems. There's as I was saying, the next iteration I see, I'm thinking conservatively. With you have to be a little careful with food because of animals.
Yeah.
But we could certainly have a small dumpster at the recycling center where people could bring that food that would help it be, but it would be taken away to be composted. It would take it out of, it wouldn't be backyard composting like what you and I do, but it would be something bigger. We could, again, according to what I learned this morning, there are companies now, we could mix that in an area with leaves and food waste and create a product, if it was managed correctly, that could either be available to our residents or made into a product that could be sold. So there's a lot of stuff coming down the pike about food waste. I mean, in Massachusetts, they've banned food waste from being in trash if you produce over a ton. Now it's a half a ton a week. So some high schools will be required, not ours, but some in the Commonwealth, really big high schools would be required to compost food waste. Big, but Bay Path might hit that scale. I'm not sure. I mean, there's stuff is coming closer to home where people are going to have to do this, which will force the industry to develop quicker in our area. So yes, I think it's coming. We could do more. We have land. It's just a matter of how we want to use it and the political appetite for a couple issues that might be surrounding that.
Okay, well, this has been a real education. Thank you, Arlene, and we will let you know in a couple weeks.
Thank you very much.
Wow. So next we have Sandra McFadden, who is interested in the Council of Aging Board of Directors as a new appointment for 3-year terms. Sandra, are you with us? You could start.
I'm trying to see if Sandra called in or she's on a Zoom.
Can you hear me all right?
Is that you, Sandra?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Sandra McFadgen, and I'm living at 91 East Greenwich Road, just a few houses down from Arlene Miller, actually. And I'm currently the co-chair of the Over 60 Club in Longmeadow, of course. And for 23 years, I've served as the human resource director for the town of Agawam and also West Springfield. And my prime responsibility was to hire people. So I have hired people to work in those adult centers. I've hired directors, I've hired Meals on Wheels directors, I've hired van drivers. So I'm very familiar with how a council on aging adult center will work. I'm very happy to serve on that committee. I'd like to serve on that committee. I have been in town for many, many years. I was actually born in Longmeadow, which many people can't say. My grandmother was a midwife and we were all born at home. So I've been here for many, many years and I'd like to give back to the community. One of my pet peeves is that there are so many Longmeadow residents who have not discovered the adult center in town. And it's my objective is to go out and recruit some of those people. We have a brand new facility now, and I'd like people to use it.
Okay, well, it sounds like you have a lot to offer. Do we have any questions from the board? Mark Gold.
Sandra, thank you for applying. I'm going to continue to ask this question, I guess, of COA people, because one of the issues has always been, who does Jim Layden work for, the COA or the town manager? And there's, I won't say discussion about it because clearly he works for the town manager, but that's why I'm asking what you see as the relationship between the COA board and the director of the adult center.
I see it as an advisory board to the adult center in terms of the types of programs that are being offered, the recruitment efforts. I just see it as more of an advisory board to the director of the adult center. He certainly does report to the town manager.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for your promoting the adult center. So folks will go in the doors once it opens. I know it won't be till July, but we'll let you know in a few weeks, Sandra.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we have Patrick Carnahan, who is seeking to be on the tree committee for a 3-year term that he be reappointed to, and also on the Conservation Commission, which would be a new appointment. Mr. Carnahan.
Tom, I do not believe, speak up if you are there, Patrick, but I don't believe he is with us tonight. I think we're going to have to reschedule for another day for Patrick.
Okay. And I guess you would have heard. So I guess we'll go to Ellen Freeman, who is interested in the Zoning Board of Appeals for reappointment for a term 5-year. It would end in 2026.
Hi, Ellen Fryman. I live at 56 Terry Drive and have been here over 26 years at this address and in town. And I think, I don't know, I've been on the ZBA probably over 20 years. So I am a lawyer and my area of practice is real estate and land use. So I'm usually on the other side of the table. I appear before ZBAs, planning boards, conservation commissions, select boards, city council. Last night I appeared before the ZBA in Pelham and I happen to have tonight off. So, so this worked out perfectly. So I can say that we do have a very good ZBA. We do have 5 lawyers on our on the board, so that little lopsided. But I do think it is. You asked the question of Mike about training, and I do think that there should be some orientation so that members of the ZBA should be familiar with 40A, which is the zoning act, and also our local zoning bylaw, because that's really what we're doing, is interpreting it against the facts of the case. One thing I will mention is that our local bylaw is probably a half a century old. I see, it was cobbled, the amendments have been kind of interspersed throughout the bylaw. You'll see 1974, 1977, 1988, so I think I bring this up every time I come before you for this interview. And, anyway, I just think we need to talk about rewriting it. There's, a lot of things that have changed. Even, 40A has changed over the years. So, one issue that comes before us more and more is the special permit for chickens in town. I don't know if you're aware of that. And I feel it's quite challenging because we don't have a really good, solid bylaw, and we're kind of on a case-by-case basis. And, if neighbors complain, then we're more likely not to allow it. And I feel like we need a little more guidance and a little more structure on how we treat chickens in town, because I don't know that it's fairly applied. And then one other thing I'll just mention is that we have such an excellent record on appeals. I don't think in all the years that I've been on the board, we've had maybe two. I know of one, appeal. So I think that's an indication that we do a pretty good job. So if you have any questions.
Yeah, well, thank you. Mark Gold has a question. Yep.
Yeah, Ellen, thanks. You answered my question about the training. I guess the question that you raised and that we raise every year, like you said, is, what's the tail and what's the dog when it comes to updating our zoning bylaws? I think the select board keeps saying, well, we would like to see the ZBA come back and recommend all these updates, but I understand that, unlike the select board, you folks are volunteers and it's tough for you to go through it.
Yeah.
Hiring a consultant or something?
I was involved with the rewriting of the Springfield zoning ordinance. I won't tell you how long it took, but it took quite a while. But they had a grant, and I know Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, might have a subsidy or certainly helps and would provide probably a consultant. Yes, and that is how it was done. There was a consultant that was hired. And then a committee was made up of people from neighborhood groups, architects, people that use the ordinance, or the bylaw in this case in Long Meadow. So could be a business owner, could be resident, and then from different fields like architect, surveyor, so with different expertise brought together. And then we met every few weeks, and the consultant proposed and did the drafting, and then we discussed it. So
can I just suggest that maybe you, through the board and Attorney Lavenberg, send a note to the select board saying we're recommending we hire a consultant, because you're right, this has been going on for
right. And it's not going to be the ZBA because we are all volunteers. We get together just every meeting, right, and there's no other opportunity to do that. So
right. So, but I think you've got to push the issue that the town needs to hire someone. And I know it was talked about before, but that will move this forward. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Great comments. Any other questions? All right. Well, I took some notes here, and we hope to hear from you or from your committee about the bylaws. I think that's a good suggestion.
Sure.
In terms of our town's growth. And we'll let you know in a couple of weeks, Ellen.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So our next person is Lawrence Rubin, who's looking to be a reappointment for the Board of Assessors for a 3-year term. Mr. Rubin, are you with us?
Hi, how are you? I'm right here.
Oh, good.
Larry Rubin, 80 King Phillip Drive, looking for reappointment for the Board of Assessors. It's not sure my 3rd or 4th term. I want to be involved. We have a great board. We've been in place for a little while. We work well together, and I think we're doing a good job for the town and the town citizens, and that's why I'm looking for a reappointment.
Okay, great. Any questions from the board? Mark Gold.
Yeah, Larry, thanks for reapplying. Question for you, same as I did for the ZBA. What kind of, because I know that you folks do need special courses. Can you just describe a little bit what you've gone through as part of the training for being part of the Board of Assessors? And part two of my question, which isn't really, it's totally different, is your take on us going back to a full-time, assistant assessor as opposed to a contract assessor.
Sure. So the state provides multiple training opportunities for us that we can take advantage. Actually, in the summer, there's a week worth of training up at UMass that we normally take advantage. I know the other two, my other two members of the board are pretty maxed out on their certifications or trainings. I am in the process of going through, which I'll probably take more at the course in UMass over the summer. So there's always courses and things for us to take and to get more familiar with the processes and whatever has to happen. The other question you asked, Mark, now that just give me the first line.
Just going back to a full-time assistant assessor.
Oh yeah, it's been phenomenal. Actually, she's the best. I mean, we're lucky to have her, and the board and her work well together, and it's it's really an asset to have her and have someone full-time in town rather than the contract thing. So it's nice to have someone back.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, Larry, thank you. We know you've been on a lot of different volunteer committees over the years, and we appreciate you stepping forward for this. And we'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
All right, Tom. Thanks.
Yep. And next we have Francis Miffett for the Council of Aging Board of Directors reappointment for a 3-year term. Francis, are you? There you
I'm
are.
here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. I'm Fran Miffett. I live at 81 Nivens Avenue here in town. We've been here for almost 30 years, which really surprises me. Time flies. I've been on the Council on Aging. I think this is my 3rd appointment. Currently, I'm serving as vice chair. And I also am on the board of directors for Greater Senior Services. And my role there is to act as a liaison to bring back things like any state issues or any issues that are affecting services in the area back to our Council on Aging. And the other way too, explaining to Greater Senior Services some Council on Aging issues. I can't tell you how excited I am about what's coming up. First of all, I feel like a kid at the end of November, and I know Christmas is coming, but it seems like it keeps getting pushed away. And I can't wait for the senior center to open, but we have an awful lot of work to do. We are changing the format in a sense for what we do there. And our goal is to increase, of course, the clientele that are using it, the awareness in town, and the availability of some of the exercise places like the what's the word I'm looking for? The track, and also the gym that's there, and creating some programs that are more off hours, creating programs that might be interesting to people that are the younger elders. I don't want to say the less mature, but you know what I mean. I'm talking about the 50s and 60s, bringing them into the fold so that they also know what's available to people. There's going to be a multiple group of volunteers needed. And for those of you who haven't seen the senior center, I can only tell you it is going to be wonderful. And we can hardly wait. But there's a lot of things we have to do. Before Mr. Gold answers, asked me, I'm going to say, Mark, we would never try to direct Jim. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's enthusiastic. And the thing that makes the board work together so well with him is that we all have the same goal. We want to serve and care for the elderly people in this town. And it's just a remarkable committee. I'm a retired registered nurse. I worked for a long time in case management. I know a lot about reimbursement and things like that. So that occasionally comes into play too. Any questions?
Let's see, is there any other questions from the board? You did such a great job of stating, what you do, your role, and you obviously are a great resource to both the boards you're on. And
the Council on Aging Board is such a diverse group of people. I mean, from builders to nurses to teachers to lawyers. I mean, it's just, that we need in this town.
I agree. One of the things that, when we look at how hard the people work in this town, they need that balance. They really need a place for recreation. And this is going to be a wonderful opportunity.
And after all the isolation that we have as all of us have gone through during the past year, the ability to get together and do educational programs and safety programs and the exercise programs, which are for all levels, is just an amazing, it's a heck of a good thing. And we're going to have a lot of fun with it, but a lot of hard work too.
Yes. All right, Francis. So we will let you know in a couple of weeks, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we have Graham Jesmer for Cable Advisory Committee. They're looking for a reappointment for a 3-year term.
Tom Graham is also not with us tonight.
Okay. And then we have Craig Carr, Building Demolition Committee, reappointment for a 3-year term, ending 6/30.
I'm right here.
All right. So can you give us your name and your address and why
Sure. I'm Craig Carr. I live at 397 Longmeadow Street. I've been in town for 38 years. Have been active in different things through the schools as my children were younger. I was one of the founding members of Friends of Stores Library. I'm very active with still maintaining the grounds through the Longmeadow Gardeners at the library. But I've been on the Demolition Committee. This would be, if okayed, my third tenure, or my third round on the committee. It's a relatively new committee. And it's working well. I'm not one of the historical members on the committee, but we've been all working together very nicely. We've had not a lot. We don't meet often, but we have had several properties that have come up that we've discussed and worked through. And one of my interests would be going forward would be to be work with the historical commission to be a little more proactive on researching some properties that potentially could come up as being problems, meaning that reaching out to maybe the lender if a property has been taken back, just so that we don't, to hope that we don't have to get to a position where where someone really wants to take it down.
Okay, so you're, just to make it clear for me that, so if we had more research, then we can make an argument to protect buildings that really should be staying in town upright.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions for Craig? Mark Gold.
Ms. Carr, thanks for applying it. Just a quick question. I think this came up with you or somebody else a few years ago. Is your committee, I know it meets when it's needed, but have they been meeting, 4 times a year or twice a year or something, just to, kind of review things and put together an agenda?
I'd like to say that we do that, but no. We have been meeting as needed to meet the requirements that we are supposed to be meeting at least once a year. I would say in general, something does come up so that we have been meeting probably at least twice a year.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve Morantz.
Yes, again, thank you for your service. Just if you could give a little more explanation of, are you talking about public buildings, private buildings? I mean, since you're a friend of the library, but now you're, taking down buildings. I'm just, this evolution here, but in terms of what the actual committee is commissioned to do, in terms of what kind of buildings you're going to have take.
So the demolition, a concern could ask that let's say you buy a house, and for starters, it has to be a house that's built prior to 1901 or of architectural significance. So if said house that you have purchased, you want to take down because you'd like to have a bigger house or one that's, who knows why you want to take it down. The Demolition Committee, which has actually been formed through the Historic Commission, has the right to ask that you not take that building down until it has been researched that, wait a minute, I'm doing this backwards. If you wanted to sell your property and the next buyer wants to take it down, the Demolition Committee can ask that you not take that building down until it's been researched that could be sold to someone who will keep it up.
Steve, this came out of a bylaw after the Marinelli house on Forest Glen was, well, I guess it's corner of Laurel and Forest Glen or whatever, was sold and demolished. And a town bylaw came up and we needed somebody to enforce the bylaw.
Yeah. Now, it is generally a committee that is through the historic, and most towns, I think most of the members are all historic people. Our committee in town is actually different. The town voted to have sort of at-large committee members on it, so that since that most houses are people's major assets, and so I think the thought was that by having additional people on there that are not totally buying into all of the historic merit, that there is concern for people's financial that they don't unnecessarily tie up someone's big asset, or tie up someone's ability to sell. Does that make sense? Probably not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and so, we look at the date you said of 1901, and I guess I'm questioning, at some point, won't that be moved up to 1921? I mean, 100 years, isn't that enough?
Exactly. That is something we should discuss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I know in my house, I found some materials that were used that were dated 1915, but they said that all the houses in my era said they were 1920 because there was records that were burned or something. Does that sound familiar?
No.
Okay, well, it wasn't, I don't know for sure. But if we have no other questions, Craig, we will let you know in a couple of weeks. But thank you for your service and your interest.
Welcome.
Okay. So next we have John Bresnahan, Conservation Committee, a reappointment for a 3-year term.
John will also be rescheduled for an additional meeting, but everyone else left on there besides Thea, because we already interviewed her earlier, is still here to be interviewed.
All waiting. Okay, so Andrea Schultz, Cultural Council, reappointment, 3 years.
Unmute.
Hello.
And hi there. Let me get the video right. Hi. So my name is Andrea Schultz, and I live over on Converse Street at 669 Converse. And I had the pleasure of serving on the Cultural Council for the last 3 years. And it was almost immediately after I moved to town. So I got here around 2017. So my background is I teach in higher education, and I am a new parent. I have 2 daughters, are going to be a part of the Longmeadow community. And I was thinking about ways that I could be involved and ways that I can serve. I'm also a veteran. And so that was kind of very important to me, that I find opportunities to serve. And so the Cultural Council seems to be a great way to sort of, get myself involved in my community. And I really enjoy the work that we do. Not only do I get to read about the different creative ways that we can engage our community, our children, our seniors, and everyone, but then I also get to enjoy the fruits of that labor. So I get to see what programs are coming to town, and we give we talk about them and discuss them. And that's always really interested in sort of considering how those programs will be a benefit to our community. And I really enjoy that work. I enjoy my team. And I really would like the opportunity to continue to serve.
Okay, great. And I hope every professor that lives in town is listening and saying, yes, I should be volunteering on a committee in town also. So that's a great attitude, great approach. Do we have any questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I would just let you know that we're glad you're seeking to continue your activities with the town, and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
And Jeremy Plum, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yes, hello.
Hello. Can you give us you've been waiting a long time. Give us your name and address. And
That's okay. I have the Bruins on in the background, and they're tied after the first period in case anyone's interested. So, Jerry Plum, 125 Ellington Street. I've been here for about 25 years. I've been a longtime member of the ZBA, and I'm up for reappointment and would be happy to continue to lend my efforts to the ZBA.
All right, great. Any questions from the board? Marco.
I don't have questions, but Jerry, I just was hoping that you heard the discussion we had with Ellen Fryman about initiatives with redoing the zoning board, and so that you can make sure that the ZBA takes that on and pushes that over to the select board with updating our zoning bylaws.
I did hear all of that, and I wholeheartedly agree with Ellen. And we'll do that because I think it's time for a more comprehensive go through of the zoning bylaw. And it's not only the chicken conundrum which keeps coming up, but there are a few other issues that I think need to be addressed and modernized for the town.
Okay, great, thanks. Any other questions? All right, well, we appreciate your interest, Jerry, and It's an important committee, as you know, and we thank you for stepping up again. And we'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
All right, good night.
Bye.
And we have one left on this list, David Marinelli, who's looking for reappointment to the Historical Commission.
Tom, what did we get? Did we miss Thea?
No, she went to the big hearing. She was the first person.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Thank you. So Dave, and also community preservation, you want to tell us why you're interested in it, or your name, address?
Yes, Dave Marinelli, 9 Overbrook Lane. I've been on the Historic Commission. I don't know if this is my third or fourth request to be appointed. It was one of the first commissions that I joined when I retired from medicine. I had been president of my radiology group for a short period of time, and I also wanted to mention that I took a financial accounting course as a graduate student while I was president of my corporation, so I'd be able to understand, financial spreadsheets and information. The first commission I wanted to join was actually community preservation. I talked to the chairman at the time and asked if there was an open seat, and he said, no, there isn't, but why don't you sign up for the Historic Commission, because we have an open seat there. And so I did sign on to the Historic Commission and have enjoyed that work quite a bit. I've learned about the town and have contributed a little bit towards understanding some of our historic structures, and learned about how we can apply for grants to preserve them. And we do get a little bit involved in the demolition delay bylaw determination, because we advise the town on which properties predate 1901. As you mentioned, Tom, there was, this euphemistic fire which destroyed records. Actually, as it turns out, those records were just destroyed because there wasn't enough storage space in town hall, and they were thrown out. There was no fire. And so there are a number of properties that are misdated because they needed to make space, and they just threw out the building records. And so it's created work for us, but we diligently research the history of buildings so that we know which ones do fall under the demolition delay bylaw. Recently, we did study the historic barns of Long Meadow, because those are pretty important structures, and occasionally we do lose an old structure because the Demolition Delay Committee is trying to balance people's property rights with the need for housing in town. And that segues a little bit with my other interest, which is on community preservation. I've been following the Community Preservation Committee proceedings, occasionally attending. I've applied a couple times for funds, and I know from speaking to the chairman that 10%, a minimum of 10% is supposed to go for each of three important categories: open space, historic, and community housing. And community housing is always one where we've fallen short. If you look at the records going back the last 15 years when we first started setting aside this money, only about 7% has been dedicated to community housing. And I think that's something that the Community Preservation Committee can work on, is to try to get some quality applications and programs going that take advantage of this important resource. I think it's a great avenue for funding things that wouldn't normally make it through the budget process. And I think it's important that the committee exercises its fiduciary responsibility, so that we're not just spending the money because we have the money, but making sure that really we have the best possible grant applications. I do want to correct a little bit of the misinformation which came down the pike. It's a little hard to get this data sometimes, and in fact, the database is undergoing a upgrade on the state website, and so fortunately, I had downloaded the data a few months ago about what our match is. We did start out at 100% match in 2007. It's been as low as 17%, but recently it's been in the low and mid 20s. 32% is the figure that's been projected for November. So things are looking up a little bit. This has been a source of over $1 million worth of funds coming from the state to Longmeadow, and that's always important for a town like Longmeadow to try to get some of our income tax money back to the community and support the things that we need done here. And I think it's a great program, and I would, if appointed, do my homework and try to make sure that we spend the money wisely.
Okay, thanks you, Dave, and thanks for catching us up on the percentage. 32% sounds great. Is proposed for next November. And do we have any questions from members of the board? Steve Morantz.
Yes, David, really, I admire your ability to serve the town, but correct me if I'm wrong, you're on the tree committee. I certainly know you're on the sustainability committee. These are two more committees you want to be on. Not stressing, making yourself a little thin here. This is, in terms of, if nothing else, is when committees meet, there's always the scheduling issue. So just, as I said, I admire what you're doing. Just, it's a lot.
Well, that's a good question. I do have a lot of energy. My first love, of course, is the trees. I'm the chairman of the tree committee, and everything I see through the filter of trees. But I've been on the historic commission for, I think, 9 years now, and it has been not that much of a challenge, other than the meetings are sometimes scheduled simultaneously. As the chairman of the tree committee, I can have a little influence on when we meet, and so I tend to schedule the tree committee meetings so that they don't conflict with other committees. I've made a decision not to renew my application for the Energy and Sustainability Committee. And so I'll still be at 3 committees, which is where I've been for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, well, yes, I think you probably do have a lot of energy, and we're glad that you're, putting that energy into serving the town. And we'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
And right, yeah, I think I could have sounded a little presumptuous that I would be on 3 committees, because I know that, I may not get appointed as a new appointment to the Community Preservation Committee. And I especially wouldn't want to displace Arlene Miller, because she's been, a great asset there. And whatever you do, please appoint Arlene.
Okay, we'll do our best.
Okay.
And we're going to close this section of the meeting. Again, those of you who have been listening, I hope you're impressed with the amount of talent that people in this town offer to make sure that our government runs smoothly, because we couldn't do it without the residents. And if we did it without the residents, we'd probably screw it up. So it's really important that we have volunteers like the folks who come forward tonight. We hope that we'll have many more in future years, because it's, just we can't run the town without them. And I think it is good for people who want to add something different to their career path or accentuate what they're doing. It would be nice if we could get some younger people, but I know that they don't usually have the time on their hands. But we appreciate everyone's participation. Now, one of the things that we had talked, in our last meeting, we asked Lynn to come back to us, there was a proposal for the board to look at a letter on the 2080 program and what our participation should be with that. So Lynn is back, and I guess we could start with the information you've received from Attorney Canoff.
Yes. Hi. Good night. Good
Yes.
night. Yes, I spoke with Attorney Canoff this morning. He had had a conversation with one of the co-authors of the letter yesterday. So he and I spoke for about a half hour this morning, and he filled me in. He said that 6 or 7 communities and community organizations have signed on to that letter. None of those communities have a gas pipeline going through them. So that's important to note just as this conversation moves on. He said the upside of the town signing on to the letter is that we can express our support in a significant matter. He said the downside is taking a position in 2080 before it's even started. He said that it's in its infancy stages. He said that there is a strong case to be made for the town to take a direct involvement rather than an indirect involvement. That he felt that this policy letter was an indirect involvement. He said that they wanted the letter signed by the 14th, but they will accept signatures after that date if other communities or organizations wanted to sign on. So it wasn't game over on the 14th. He did feel that the town should have a strong, or he noted that the town should have a discussion on this. And I asked him more about the 2080 process. It's not an intervener process. It's more of a formal process that he would request that the town have a seat at the table with the utility companies. So he would call the company's lawyers and find out what their process is that they're undertaking. I did do a little bit more research on this. It appears that they have just selected a consultant, and that consultant's supposed to be doing some work. And then they have to report back by March of next year on the path to get to net zero by 2050. So he noted that nothing meaningful was happening right now, but that definitely later on there would be meaningful conversation happening and that we would want a seat at that table. He did not want us to take a position before that process has started because it gives the companies an argument that our decision's already been made and that we would not offer anything different if we were given a seat at the table. Let's see. He said we really need a decision whether or not to get involved or not. And that we would need to, there would need to be a dialogue with who is involved on what. There are 2 other communities that have filed comments regarding 2080, but most of the work being done right now is still very much behind the scenes. So I asked him if there was a downside to us signing the letter and getting involved. And that's when he, reiterated again his concern about us signing on to a policy letter is making a statement right now about what our decision already is. And he said that there's a risk to sign it, but it's not clear that it's enough of a risk not to sign, but that it does leave him in an unfortunate position of having to defend our ability to be at the table, having already taken a stance on the matter. Let's see, he did, clarify for me that none of the towns signing on to the letter had a direct fight, not like Long Meadow does. It provides an opportunity. Yeah. And so that was ultimately the gist of it. He left it up to us, but cautioned that it does give those utility companies a defense to not have us at the table if we chose to want to take part in a more direct way in the 2080 matter.
Okay, Lynn, thank you for your work and talking to Attorney Canoff and making sure of all the details. This was something that we did delay voting on until we had heard from him. And so I don't know if members of the board have any comments on the report from Lynn. I see Stephen Rance. Yeah.
Yes, I really don't want to take, I don't want to disagree with our council, but this letter has nothing to do with a pipeline proposed to run through Long Meadow. This letter says there's a 2080 process. Municipalities, we are a municipality. I mean, I assume you've all read the letter, and as he has, municipalities want to talk, should be considered in whatever the state decides to do, or in this case, whatever the utility companies decide under 2080 to do. We've passed 2 bylaws, we had an election. It seems to be fairly clear what the community feels about this, but I'm not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to be one on TV, but I find it hard to believe that this, in any way, shape, or form, would prejudice anybody about what's going on. Getting us at the table 2080 is another issue, and I would hope that Attorney Canoff would discuss that with us. But I see absolutely no I understand that the communities to date that have signed on to this, although there are communities that are actively engaged with Eversource Gas that do not want their communities affected by pipeline expansion, have not signed on to this, but that's because they're already in court fighting gas expansion projects. I just think that for us to sign this letter saying, hey, we're a municipality, we think that given what 2080 says, what DPU says, let's investigate how to decarbonize our state by 2050. Municipalities ought to have a say in how we decarbonize. It's pretty simple, and I don't think the letter says anything else but that. So that's what I get out of it, and I would hope the board would join the other communities and say, yeah, let's at least have you, the DPW, as you investigate and hear what the consultant that they've hired and basically the utility companies are running. Make no mistake, they are in charge of the 2080 process. Yeah, hey, utilities, please, listen to what your municipalities have to say, because anything you guys do involves us, any municipality. That's where all the pipes are going through. They're going, they're going through towns and cities, and that's what it's about. So I do not quite necessarily understand exactly what any risk would be about this, given us joining the other communities saying, hey, we would like you to consider municipalities in your process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Gold, I see your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to tend to side with the attorney, and I do that, Steve, not necessarily because I disagree with you, but I'm weighing the positives and the negatives. And frankly, if we sign this letter, the positive is we become one of many, many communities signing on to a letter to the DPUC. And how much stronger does that make the commitment or the directive or the comments to the DPUC, as opposed to the negative of us doing this is it potentially, and I know it's potential, but it potentially affords Eversource the chance to pick us out of that list of names and use it as a way to keep us off the 2080, if you will, review process. And I think that the risk of us being left out of or being excluded from the 2080 review process is far greater to us than the benefit of being whether it's the 17th or the 25th or whatever it is, community to sign on to what's truly appears to me to be a pretty amorphous letter to the DPUC or the DPU. So, not that I don't think we should sign it. I'm just concerned, as Attorney Canoff indicated, that it provides Eversource the ability to pluck us out of that list of communities and use it against us in the future. And I don't think we want that to happen.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, hey, Tom, it's Mark.
Yes.
Strange. So so the 2080 letter is kind of bigger picture climate change goals, as opposed to more specifically related or applying to the pipeline issue in town. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely. 2080 has to do with how the utility companies, LDCs, local distribution companies, are to meet the 2050 goals of, whatever the reduction that the state has. Basically, that's what the state law says. How are you going to reach these goals? The 2080 document, which was basically initiated by the Attorney General. The Attorney General said, how are you going to do this, folks? And the Attorney General said, okay, it's okay for the utility companies to come up with how they're going to do it. So the utility companies are actually running the show about how they are going to reach all these greenhouse gas reductions by 2050. It has nothing to do with, there is no moratorium about anything they do now. If they wanted to start tomorrow building in town, 2080 has nothing to do with it. 2080 is an overall, how are you going to get to decarbonization by 2050? What is your overall plan to do that? And it's, what is it? Is it NiSource? It's basically the two big companies. It's, Eversource and NiSource or whoever the other big guy is in the eastern part of the state. So it has nothing to do with anything specific that's going on in terms of a project right now. This is an overall arching, it's a big picture process to get us to where the state says we need to be in 2050.
Thank you, Steve. So I think where I am on this is, regardless whether there was a gas expansion proposed in Longmeadow or not, I would be in favor of the select board signing this letter and sending it to the DPU, because it's a separate, overarching, as Steve said, issue, and it just so happens that we also have a potential gas expansion coming into town, and I think that's a separate but related issue. I wouldn't want to not send the letter when we ordinarily or otherwise would have. Just because there's a proposed pipeline, I do think that they're different issues.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other comments? Well, I would say that again, the pipeline and the gas companies have federal rules that give them quite a bit of leverage over our town. And that, our strength is really going to be in getting legislators on our side to try to find a way to circumvent this pipeline being rebuilt and expanded. Anything that would cause us to lose any leverage, I would not be interested in signing on to. I think that the lawyer that we're working with, Attorney Canoff, spoke to the individuals who wrote this letter, and I have to trust his opinion as a lawyer that this is what he feels we would be losing some leverage, and and he said, not like Mark was saying, the 17th or the 25th, but 6 to 7 communities have signed this, so it isn't like we are sticking out as folks who don't want to protect the environment. I mean, there's over 350 communities in the state. So I guess that's my feeling is I think we should stick with the lawyer that we've been working with on this.
Yes, but Tom, our lawyer did not say don't, unlike the last letter we talked about, where he specifically said, don't sign this letter. He didn't say that. And I also spoke to the woman, the lawyer who wrote this letter, who would not say, sign the letter because, wow, I'm putting you in any kind of position that's going to, hurt your community in any way, shape, or form. So she had no problem with us. She, as a lawyer, as you read the letter, this is from, Harvard Law, she had no, my discussion with her which is why I brought this to the board, is she did not see this as any kind of, this was just, hey, folks, there is the DPU, and it's got nothing to do with the feds. The feds is the meter station in Tennessee Gas, and this has nothing to do with the meter station. This is all eventually and it has nothing to do with what Eversource may want to do with this town. It has to do with how is Eversource, how is NiSource, how are they going to meet the 2050 guidelines to basically reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 80% of what they were, in 2000, whatever. That's what this hearing is about. Having municipalities participate in that hearing makes absolute sense to me, because if anything happens with gas community, anything that happens in municipalities. So I think that while we certainly do not want to jeopardize any future anything, as I said, Canoff didn't say don't sign it, as he did to the other letter that we brought to the board. And as the person who wrote this said, she saw no reason that my conversation with her that this would have any. It has nothing to do with anything specific. It's a very, as Mark Golden said, it's a very generalized letter. It just says, hey, pay attention to municipalities. I don't see how that can harm us, and I think so I would again urge the board to say this is something that we think is important, that the DPU, as they consider how to meet greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050, take into account what happens in municipalities, which is whether it's building codes, it's not just pipelines, it's building, it's how we're going to get there, how you heat your house, how we heat our buildings. It's a lot. So anyway, I'm not sure I can go on without repeating myself, but it seems to be clear that this is, I think we're making a statement. I don't believe we're putting ourselves in any kind of legal jeopardy to say, please, folks, take a look at what municipalities might have to say as the process evolves, which we're in the early stages. Nothing's really happened. 2080 hasn't even happened. The people who can get to speak, that's why this letter was written. The people who get to speak about how the utilities get to meet these goals haven't been determined. This letter says, hey, when you determine who gets to speak, have the municipalities have a say.
Mm-hmm. So, Stephen, how would you explain the attorney's comments then that this could exclude us from being part of the 2080 process in the future? How do you explain that? Why would he say that? Well, I actually, I don't know. I'd like to hear what he has to say. I mean, first of all, we haven't been included. The stakeholder process, what that means is we actually became a stakeholder back the last time around. Long Meadow as a town is a stakeholder in some of these processes. We're all stakeholders in 2080. We're all stakeholders in how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. That's very different than, hey, these guys want to build a pipeline through our town. That's a different stakeholder thing altogether. That's got to do with what's happening in our town whenever this may happen. That's not the same as, municipalities should be stakeholders because where everything's going to happens in municipalities. That's just the nature of being. It happens in towns. It happens in cities. So if we're going to say, well, we need to do this with pipes here, we need to dig this stuff up and put parallel pipes so we can have ground sourced heat pumps. And as opposed to having gas go through here, we're going to have ground source heat pumps, heat buildings. The municipality that has that going through ought to have a say in how that's done and how it's affected. So as I said, I'm not quite sure since we did not have this discussion with him, but as I said, he didn't say don't sign it. Is there a downside? I guess so. I mean, it's a legalized world we live in, but since unlike the last letter we really wanted to sign, that we voted to sign subject to approval of, we said don't sign it. He didn't say that in this case. And I think as a community, as a municipality, it would be
I think it would be in our best interest to join the rest of the municipalities and say, yeah, please, folks, keep us in mind as this process goes forward. And
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, I'd like to ask Lynn a question, please.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn, in a conversation with the attorney, was there anything that he said was to the upside for us signing this?
That we could express support, that the town can express support in this significant matter.
What was the upside of that, though?
That we go on record about our support for municipalities being involved, I guess. He didn't really elaborate on that. We spent most of the time talking about what the challenge could be for him trying to get us at the table if we decide we want to be at that table.
Right. Well, I think I clearly see the downside. I guess I'm having difficulty seeing the upside, especially considering the position that our community is in. Maybe somebody can help me on that?
So Lynn, what you're saying is by signing this letter, which saying, please municipalities, please DPU, have municipalities participate in 2080. Although, as I think we all recall, when at some discussion we had, he said he wasn't all that interested in us joining 2080. And I'm not even sure how we would join 2080. And I'm not even sure how 2080 applies to what's going to happen in our town. But if we sign this letter, he said, if we then want to join 2080, what would happen? Why would signing this letter prohibit us from being part of a 2080 discussion later? Did he explain that to you?
Yes, that we are making a statement that we already have our mind made up, that there is no life for gas in the future, and that I'm definitely summarizing greatly here, but that we already have our mind made up, and that adding us to the table is not going to prove any beneficial use for the utility companies. That we've already gone on record with our position by signing that letter.
So by saying 2080, which is actually a request by the Attorney General to say, please tell us how you're going to meet the law that says we need to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and please bring municipalities to the table. He's saying by signing a letter that says that, we're saying we want, that's it for gas. Gas is dead, and therefore we're biased against it because we're signing a letter that says, please, tell us how utilities should follow the law. That one,
So
I'm a bit confused by that reasoning.
As we look at this, then Canoff is saying that if we go to if they say, okay, this is your stance, you feel this way about emissions, but if we go to the table later, we can be more detailed, and I think that's what a lawyer would want to do, be more detailed about how the specific gas project in our town is problematic, and it's going to get in the way of reaching these goals, in 2050 of controlling gas emissions, and so whereas this letter is a general letter, and I think that if you have a letter like this that is such an important document and that everyone's on board with and is due on the 14th of this month, and it's already the 9th of the month, and you only have 7 people signed on, I guess I'd have a lot of questions just about that. Mark, I saw you trying to raise your hand. Did you, Mark Gold?
Yeah, no, my only comment was going to be the letter's going to go out, and the letter's going to go out with the number of towns that have endorsed it listed in there. So it's not like if we don't vote on it, this letter doesn't go out. It's just.
I think Mark may have froze.
Yeah, Marcus froze. So
sorry, I'm going in and out here. So Tom, can I ask Lynn a question?
Well, let's see, if Mark Gold, are you back with us yet?
Oh, sorry, other Mark.
Oh, yeah, no, the wrong Mark. Mark Gold, he froze. He may be, well, I don't know. But I would allow you to ask your question, Mark, and we can go back to Mark Gold.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My system dropped us. I don't know.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I apologize. I had to log back in. I was just going to say that,
very far. You said that, the letter.
yeah, the letter's going to go out anyway. And so it's not like our addition of the town of Long Meadow's name to this is overly compelling. And I think that, Lynn is trying to do her best to express Attorney Canoff's concerns. And so I'll defer back to my original comments, but that's all I was going to say.
Okay, thanks. And then Mark Strange wanted to ask a question.
So, Lynn, so when we talk about this proverbial 2080 table to be at, what exactly is the context, or what would that, what would we be talking about?
Right. So a lot of that is still to be determined. The process is not established yet. He's stating that 2080 is very much in its infancy stages, and that by signing the letter, we're taking a position on something that doesn't even have a process started yet. So he said that if the town wanted to, he could spend about 1 to 2 hours of work reaching out to the company lawyers to find out what the process is that they're working on and that the town would try to be involved with. He still doesn't know that yet, and it hasn't been announced anywhere. So it still remains to be seen what that proverbial table is and what that process will be.
So I would say that, again, reiterating my earlier comments, even if there wasn't like a pipeline coming in the town, I would still want to participate in that process, because as Steve said, there are other aspects of this that I think, we heard on, whether there's a pipeline or not.
Okay.
One last comment. I just don't understand. I wouldn't want Attorney Canoff to spend 10 seconds at this point in time to find out what the 2080 process is, because no one knows what the 2080 process is. It has not been established. This letter says, hey guys, when you establish this process, please consider municipalities. That's what it says. Nothing more, nothing less. To say, well, we want to see the table. We don't know what the table is. We don't know what the table looks like. We're not sure what, and it's got nothing to do with, hey, there's a gas expansion project in your town. Let's talk about that in the context of 2080. Apples and oranges. So the fact that Attorney Canoff does not know what 2080 is going to happen puts us with everyone else. And this letter says, we understand that we don't know what 2080 is going to bring, but when it does, please consider municipalities. That's all it is. And if we can't get this board to say, hey, we're a municipality and we want to be in at the table whenever this happens as a municipality, as one of the, just as a general concept, we're a municipality. If we can't get our board to do that, I'm taken aback is what it is, because I think that this is, we're not jumping off the deep end. We're sticking our toe in the water, saying, hey, let's join other municipalities and say, please keep us in mind when you do this, whenever you decide how you're going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, I'd like to call a question, please.
There's been no question. There's been no motion.
No, I'm calling the question. This is in reference to us signing this letter, to the motion to sign this letter, correct?
I don't.
No motion.
Did we have a motion on the table last week that we held? I don't believe we did. But,
yeah, I was going to say we're talking 20 minutes and we don't have a motion.
Okay, so let's see if there is going to be a motion. So Richard is calling the question. Is there a motion?
No, this was in reference. Refresh my memory, please, Lynn. Wasn't this a follow through from last meeting?
Yes.
Where there was a request to sign this letter? Was there an official motion at that point?
I have my notes, and it says that there was not only a motion, but there was then a motion to defer this that Steve made and I seconded it. But so You know, whatever was there, it was deferred by a vote 4-0.
Okay, and we've reopened this at this meeting with the main topic. So I would assume, Tom, and parliamentary, I may be wrong, but I would assume we have an open motion, which I'd like to call the question on.
Well, we need to renew the motion, but you know, Mike or somebody, it was like 10:10 or so that last night at the on tape. If somebody wants to go look at it, but I don't think, I'm not sure there's a motion anymore on the table, Richard.
Okay.
Mark, I have down the same thing that you have, that it was a motion to defer to this meeting, and that the vote passed 4-0. There was no other motion.
But how was it deferred to this meeting, Mike? Was there a motion to sign the letter? I mean, we didn't table this.
Yeah, I don't believe there was a motion, but I think I took a vote to make sure that we were all on board, you know, that there was a definitive vote to postpone it from our meeting on Monday night. And so that was the only vote taken on this. And as this meeting, you know, we've had a discussion and we've had a report. So yes, you could, you know, I think you have every right to say, is there going to be a motion? Or are we going to just keep discussing this? So that's the question. He's calling the question. What are we going to do?
Okay, I'd like to place, then I'm not sure what the wording would be, but I'd like to propose a motion that that we do not sign this letter as under the advisement from our legal staff.
Second.
And that's been seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? Okay.
Sorry. So I want to be very sorry, Tom.
Yes,
Can I ask Len one more question?
Oh yeah, we're still open. Yeah.
So the motion is that Attorney Canoff advised us not to sign the letter. Was that his advice?
Well, I guess I would leave that to, you know, the person who made the motion felt that the advice, his interpretation of the attorney's advice is not to go forward on this. And so that's his motion.
That's correct.
But I mean, my interpretation would be that there was no definitive advice given by Attorney Canoff. I would just make a motion to amend Richard's motion to remove the part where Attorney Canoff affirmatively advised us not to sign the letter.
I don't think that was in the motion, Mark.
It was. Yes, it was.
Okay.
So he said it was his interpretation was the advice of the attorney was not to sign this. And I mean, that's his motion. I don't know what he amended to. I guess you could just say that you just don't feel we should sign it. I guess that would.
Yeah. I mean, my amendment would be, I'm not going to make the amendment, but you know, I don't know that it was clear that Attorney Canoff affirmatively said, don't sign the letter. You know, his advice was not, you know, to not sign the letter.
Okay.
Unless I
think
well, it's just up for debate. I think that's a little bit up for debate because he
no, his advice was there are pros and cons. He didn't say don't sign the letter. That was not his advice. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, Lynn. Did he say don't sign the letter?
No, you're correct. He was outlining the risk of signing it, is that we may prevent ourselves from being at the table in the future.
But as opposed to the last letter we had, which he specifically said don't sign. He didn't say.
Okay, Tom, I'll withdraw the motion and replace it with my motion is that we do not endorse this letter.
Okay.
Second.
That's second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Mike Barbieri.
Mr. Lacusa?
Yes.
Mr. Strange?
No.
Mr. Morantz?
No.
Mr. Gold?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, we can move on and discuss this later as things develop and as this 2080, you know, movement sort of develops and we know where things are going. But okay, well, that was a good discussion. I hope everyone felt they had a fair opportunity to voiced their opinions, and we thank you, Lynn, for doing a very clear job of telling us exactly what the attorney reported to you, so we could make the best decision we could at this point in time. And with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, in a second.
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Lacusa,
Yes.
Mr. Strange,
Yes.
Mr. Morantz,
Yes.
Mr. Gold,
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good night.